The Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, all items CPI-U is a measure of the average monthly change in the price for goods and services paid by urban consumers between any two time periods. It can also represent the buying habits of urban consumers. This particular index includes roughly 88% of the total population, accounting for wage earners, clerical workers, technical workers, self-employed, short-term workers, unemployed, retirees, and those not in the labor force. The CPIs are based on prices for food, clothing, shelter, and fuels, transportation fares, service fees e.g., water and sewer service, and sales taxes. Prices are collected monthly from about 4,000 housing units and approximately 26,000 retail establishments across 87 urban areas. To calculate the index, price changes are averaged with weights representing their importance in the spending of the particular group. The index measures price changes as a percent change from a predetermined reference date. In addition to the original unadjusted index distributed, the Bureau of Labor Statistics also releases a seasonally adjusted index. The unadjusted series reflects all factors that may influence a change in prices. However, it can be very useful to look at the seasonally adjusted CPI, which removes the effects of seasonal changes, such as weather, school year, production cycles, and holidays. The CPI can be used to recognize periods of inflation and deflation. Significant increases in the CPI within a short time frame might indicate a period of inflation, and significant decreases in CPI within a short time frame might indicate a period of deflation. However, because the CPI includes volatile food and oil prices, it might not be a reliable measure of inflationary and deflationary periods. For a more accurate detection, the core CPI (CPI-LFESL) is often used. When using the CPI, please note that it is not applicable to all consumers and should not be used to determine relative living costs. Additionally, the CPI is a statistical measure vulnerable to sampling error since it is based on a sample of prices and not the complete average. Consumer Price Index, July 2020. Transmission of material in this release is embargoed until 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, August 12, 2020. The Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers (CPI-U) increased 0.6% in July on a seasonally adjusted basis, the same increase as in June, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today. Over the last 12 months, the All Items Index increased 1.0% before seasonal adjustment. The Gasoline Index continued to rise in July after increasing sharply in June and accounted for about 1/4 of the monthly increase in the seasonally adjusted All Items Index. The Energy Index increased 2.5% in July as the Gasoline Index rose 5.6%. This was partially offset by the Food Index, which decreased 0.4% in July, with the index for food at home declining 1.1%. The index for all items less food and energy rose 0.6% in July, its largest increase since January 1991. The index for motor vehicle insurance increased sharply in July, as it did the previous month. The indexes for shelter, communication, used cars and trucks, and medical care also increased in July, while the index for recreation declined. The All Items Index increased 1.0% for the 12 months ending July, a larger increase than the 0.6% rise for the period ending June. The index for all items less food and energy increased 1.6% over the last 12 months. The Food Index increased 4.1% over the last 12 months, with the index for food at home rising 4.6%. Despite increasing in July, the Energy Index fell 11.2% over the last 12 months. Chart 1. 1-month percent change in CPI for all urban consumers CPI-U, seasonally adjusted, July 2019 to July 2020. Percent change. Chart 2. 12-month percent change in CPI for all urban consumers CPI-U, not seasonally adjusted, July 2019 to July 2020. Percent change. Table A. Percent changes in CPI for all urban consumers CPI-U, U.S. city average. Food. The food index decreased 0.4% in July, its first decrease since April 2019. The food at home index fell 1.1% in July after increasing 0.7% in June. 5 of the 6 major grocery store food group indexes fell in July. The index for meat, poultry, fish, and eggs decreased 3.8% in July. This decline was led by the index for beef, which fell 8.2% in July after increasing sharply in recent months. The index for dairy and related products declined 0.8% in July after a 0.4% decrease in June. The index for non-alcoholic beverages fell 0.5% in July, while the index for cereals and bakery products declined 0.4% and the index for other food at home fell 0.2%. The only major grocery store food group index to increase in July was fruits and vegetables, which rose 0.1%. The index for food away from home rose 0.5% in July, as it did in June. The index for full-service meals increased 0.4%, following a 0.9% increase in June. The index for limited service meals advanced 0.6% in July after rising 0.5% in June. The food at home index increased 4.6% over the last 12 months. All 6 major grocery store food group indexes rose over that span. The index for beef increased 14.2% over the last 12 months, contributing to an 8.4% increase in the index for meats, poultry, fish, and eggs. The remaining groups rose more modestly, with increases ranging from 2.3% fruits and vegetables to 5.0% non-alcoholic beverages. The index for food away from home rose 3.4% over the last year. The index for limited service meals increased 4.5% and the index for full-service meals rose 2.9% over the last 12 months. Energy. The energy index rose 2.5% in July after rising 5.1% in June. The increase was predominantly a result of the gasoline index, which rose 5.6% in July following a 12.3% increase in June. Before seasonal adjustment, gasoline prices rose 4.8% in July. The electricity index increased 0.3% in July, following a decline of 0.3% in June. The index for natural gas, in contrast, fell 1.0% over the month. The energy index fell 11.2% over the past 12 months. The gasoline index decreased 20.3%, while the fuel oil index fell 27.2%. The index for natural gas declined 0.3% and the index for electricity decreased slightly over the year, falling 0.1%. All items less food and energy. The index for all items less food and energy increased 0.6% in July after increasing 0.2% in June. The index for motor vehicle insurance rose sharply by 9.3% in July following a 5.1% increase in June. The shelter index rose 0.2% in July, with the indexes for rent and owner's equivalent rent both increasing 0.2%. The medical care index rose 0.4% in July, as it did in June. The index for physician services increased 0.7%, and the index for hospital services rose 0.2%. The index for prescription drugs, however, decreased 0.2% in July after increasing 0.1% in June. The index for communication increased 1.9% in July, as the index for wireless telephone services rose 3.6%. The index for used cars and trucks increased 2.3% over the month, ending a 3-month string of declines. The airline fares index increased 5.4% in July following a 2.6% rise in June. Other indexes that increased in July include new vehicles plus 0.8%, apparel plus 1.1%, household furnishings and operations plus 0.5%, and personal care plus 0.2%. The recreation index declined 0.6% in July, as it did in June. The index for all items less food and energy rose 1.6% over the past 12 months. The shelter index rose 2.3% over the 12-month span. The index for rent increased 3.1% and the index for owner's equivalent rent rose 2.8%, while the index for lodging away from home fell 13.4%. The medical care index increased 5.0% over the last 12 months. The indexes for airline fares, apparel, motor vehicle insurance, and used cars and trucks all declined over the past 12 months. Not seasonally adjusted CPI measures. The Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers (CPI-U) increased 1.0% over the last 12 months to an index level of 259.101, 1982-84 equals 100. For the month, the index rose 0.5% prior to seasonal adjustment. The Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers (CPI-U) increased 1.0% over the last 12 months to an index level of 252.636, 1982-84 equals 100. For the month, the index rose 0.6% prior to seasonal adjustment. The Chained Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers (CPI-U) increased 0.7% over the last 12 months. For the month, the index increased 0.5% on a not seasonally adjusted basis. Please note that the indexes for the past 10 to 12 months are subject to revision. The Consumer Price Index for August 2020 is scheduled to be released on Friday, September 11, 2020 at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic impact on July 2020 Consumer Price Index data. Data collection by personal visit for the Consumer Price Index (CPI) program has been suspended since March 16, 2020. When possible, data normally collected by personal visit were collected either online or by phone. Additionally, data collection in July was affected by the temporary closing or limited operations of certain types of establishments. These factors resulted in an increase in the number of prices considered temporarily unavailable and imputed. While the CPI program attempted to collect as much data as possible, many indexes are based on smaller amounts of collected prices than usual, and a small number of indexes that are normally published were not published this month. Additional information is available at www.bls.gov/covid19/effects-of-covid-consumer-price-index.htm. Technical note. Brief explanation of the CPI. The Consumer Price Index (CPI) measures the change in prices paid by consumers for goods and services. The CPI reflects spending patterns for each of two population groups: all urban consumers and urban wage earners and clerical workers. The all-urban consumer group represents about 93% of the total U.S. population. It is based on the expenditures of almost all residents of urban or metropolitan areas, including professionals, the self-employed, the poor, the unemployed, and retired people, as well as urban wage earners and clerical workers. Not included in the CPI are the spending patterns of people living in rural non-metropolitan areas, farming families, people in the armed forces, and those in institutions, such as prisons and mental hospitals. Consumer inflation for all urban consumers is measured by two indexes, namely, the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers (CPI-U) and the Chained Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers (CCPI-U). The Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers (CPI-W) is based on the expenditures of households included in the CPI-U definition that meet two requirements. More than one-half of the household's income must come from clerical or wage occupations, and at least one of the household's earners must have been employed for at least 37 weeks during the previous 12 months. The CPI-W population represents about 29% of the total U.S. population and is a subset of the CPI-U population. The CPIs are based on prices of food, clothing, shelter, fuels, transportation, doctors and dentist services, drugs, and other goods and services that people buy for day-to-day living. Prices are collected each month in 75 urban areas across the country from about 6,000 housing units and approximately 22,000 retail establishments, department stores, supermarkets, hospitals, filling stations, and other types of stores and service establishments. All taxes directly associated with the purchase and use of items are included in the index. Prices of fuels and a few other items are obtained every month in all 75 locations. Prices of most other commodities and services are collected every month in the 3 largest geographic areas and every other month in other areas. Prices of most goods and services are obtained by personal visits or telephone calls by the Bureau's trained representatives. In calculating the index, price changes for the various items in each location are aggregated using weights, which represent their importance in the spending of the appropriate population group. Local data are then combined to obtain a U.S. city average. For the CPI-U and CPI-W, separate indexes are also published by size of city, by region of the country, for cross-classifications of regions and population size classes, and for 23 selected local areas. Area indexes do not measure differences in the level of prices among cities, they only measure the average change in prices for each area since the base period. For the CPI-U, data are issued only at the national level. The CPI-U and CPI-W are considered final when released, but the CPI-U is issued in preliminary form and subject to 3 subsequent quarterly revisions. The index measures price change from a designed reference date. For most of the CPI-U and the CPI-W, the reference base is 1982-84 equals 100. The reference base for the CPI-U is December 1999 equals 100. An increase of 7% from the reference base, for example, is shown as 107.000. Alternatively, that relationship can also be expressed as the price of a base period market basket of goods and services rising from $100 to $107. Sampling error in the CPI. The CPI is a statistical estimate that is subject to sampling error because it is based upon a sample of retail prices and not the complete universe of all prices. BLS calculates and publishes estimates of the 1-month, 2-month, 6-month, and 12-month % change standard errors annually for the CPI-U. These standard error estimates can be used to construct confidence intervals for hypothesis testing. For example, the estimated standard error of the 1-month % change is 0.03% for the U.S. all items CPI. This means that if we repeatedly sample from the universe of all retail prices using the same methodology, and estimate a percentage change for each sample, then 95% of these estimates will be within 0.06% of the 1-month % change based on all retail prices. For example, for a 1-month change of 0.2% in the all items CPI-U, we are 95% confident that the actual % change based on all retail prices would fall between 0.14 and 0.26%. For the latest data, including information on how to use the estimates of standard error, see https://www.bls.gov/cpi/tables/varianceestimates/home.htm. Calculating index changes. Movements of the indexes from one month to another are usually expressed as % changes rather than changes in index points, because index point changes are affected by the level of the index in relation to its base period, while % changes are not. The following table shows an example of using index values to calculate % changes. Use of seasonally adjusted and unadjusted data. The Consumer Price Index (CPI) produces both unadjusted and seasonally adjusted data. Seasonally adjusted data are computed using seasonal factors derived by the X13ARIMA seats seasonal adjustment method. These factors are updated each February, and the new factors are used to revise the previous 5 years of seasonally adjusted data. The factors are available at www.bls.gov/cpi/tables/seasonal-adjustment/seasonal-factors-2020.pdf. For more information on data revision scheduling, Please see the fact sheet on seasonal adjustment at www.bls.gov/cpi/seasonal-adjustment/questions-and-answers.htm and the timeline of seasonal adjustment methodological changes at www.bls.gov/cpi/seasonal-adjustment-methodology-changes.htm. For analyzing short-term price trends in the economy, seasonally adjusted changes are usually preferred since they eliminate the effect of changes that normally occur at the same time and in about the same magnitude every year, such as price movements resulting from weather events, production cycles, model changeovers, holidays, and sales. This allows data users to focus on changes that are not typical for the time of year. The unadjusted data are of primary interest to consumers concerned about the prices they actually pay. Unadjusted data are also used extensively for escalation purposes. Many collective bargaining contract agreements and pension plans, for example, tie compensation changes to the Consumer Price Index before adjustment for seasonal variation. BLS advises against the use of seasonally adjusted data in escalation agreements because seasonally adjusted series are revised annually. Intervention analysis. The Bureau of Labor Statistics uses intervention analysis seasonal adjustment for some CPI series. Sometimes extreme values or sharp movements can distort the underlying seasonal pattern of price change. Intervention analysis seasonal adjustment is a process by which the distortions caused by such unusual events are estimated and removed from the data prior to calculation of seasonal factors. The resulting seasonal factors, which more accurately represent the seasonal pattern, are then applied to the unadjusted data. For example, this procedure was used for the motor fuel series to offset the effects of the 2009 return to normal pricing after the worldwide economic downturn in 2008. Retaining this outlier data during seasonal factor calculation would distort the computation of the seasonal portion of the time series data for motor fuel, so it was estimated and removed from the data prior to seasonal adjustment. Following that, seasonal factors were calculated based on this prior adjusted data. These seasonal factors represent a clearer picture of the seasonal pattern in the data. The last step is for motor fuel seasonal factors to be applied to the unadjusted data. For the seasonal factors introduced for January 2020, BLS adjusted 53 series using intervention analysis seasonal adjustment, including selected food and beverage items, motor fuels, electricity, and vehicles. Revision of seasonally adjusted indexes. Seasonally adjusted data, including the U.S. City Average All Items Index levels, are subject to revision for up to 5 years after their original release. Every year, economists in the CPI calculate new seasonal factors for seasonally adjusted series and apply them to the last 5 years of data. Seasonally adjusted indexes beyond the last 5 years of data are considered to be final and not subject to revision. For January 2020, revised seasonal factors and seasonally adjusted indexes for 2015 to 2019 were calculated and published. For series which are directly adjusted using the Census X13ARIMA Seats seasonal adjustment software, the seasonal factors for 2019 will be applied to data for 2020 to produce the seasonally adjusted 2020 indexes. Series which are indirectly seasonally adjusted by summing seasonally adjusted component series have seasonal factors which are derived and are therefore not available in advance. Determining seasonal status. Each year the seasonal status of every series is re-evaluated based upon certain statistical criteria. Using these criteria, BLS economists determine whether a series should change its status from not seasonally adjusted to seasonally adjusted, or vice versa. If any of the 81 components of the U.S. City Average All Items Index change their seasonal adjustment status from seasonally adjusted to not seasonally adjusted, not seasonally adjusted data will be used in the aggregation of the dependent series for the last 5 years, but the seasonally adjusted indexes before that period will not be changed. 28 of the 81 components of the U.S. City Average All Items Index are not seasonally adjusted for 2020. Contact information for additional information about the CPI. Visit www.bls.gov/CPI.